Now, a little warning before we begin, there is going to be some major spoilers in this video for the 5th episode of The Acolyte, so if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, it is a really good time to click away. Alright, so as has been the case for the last few weeks now doing reviews for this show, what I will be doing here is giving my overall thoughts on the episode and talking about or discussing some of the major things in it. The stuff I think most people are going to want to talk about or discuss first and foremost. And tomorrow I will be doing a longer, deeper dive into the episode and going over pretty much everything. And so I think what I'll start out with here are some of the positives, before going into some of the negatives, some of the things that left me shaking my head when the episode ended for a number of reasons. But anyway, on a positive note, I do think that the lightsaber fights here in this episode looked, for the most part, they looked really good. I think this was easily, not that this is going to be saying much, but this was easily the best looking saber fights we've seen so far in live action Star Wars shows on Disney+. Not to mention, the lightsabers were indeed deadly. Characters got stabbed with them and died like they probably should die when they get stabbed with something that can melt through big, heavy metal doors. And speaking of that, credit to them, I suppose, for actually killing off main-ish characters, in particular Bjord and Jecki. I was, not to sound sadistic, but I was pleasantly surprised to see them do that. I thought for sure only the no-name red shirt Jedi who had accompanied them would be the ones who actually die on the mission, but they actually killed off some of the characters that had been kind of built up a little bit. And I say a little bit because, honestly, neither death really hit me that hard. They didn't really hit me on any emotional level because we barely got to know them, I feel like. I mean, that is one of my biggest issues with this show overall. I feel like there hasn't been much of a reason given to care about any of these characters. And oftentimes they're so inconsistent, it's a little frustrating to say the least to even try to figure out what is going on with them, what might be motivating them. Like in this episode where 1 second May was hugging Osha and she's all happy saying she loves her, and then the next minute she's leaving her behind to die? Then there's the fact that she, May, was also going to turn herself into the Jedi. We saw that in the last episode. And then when one tried to arrest her, she tries to kill them? And sure, I get it, maybe she kind of panicked or something because her master had shown up, but May has to believe her master is pretty pissed at her for wanting to betray him, or that he would learn from Khmer that she was going to betray him, and that he's probably just going to kill her. So really, May's only hope of survival here, or so you'd figure, or so you think she would figure, is to side with the Jedi and hope they can kill her master, right? I don't know, there were a couple times in this episode, or maybe more than a couple, that I was amazed at what a character was doing or falling for, but we will get more into that later in the video and in tomorrow's video as well. Either way, yes, the fights were pretty good visually. I'm sure Twitter or X is full of people calling this episode a masterpiece because of all the pretty flashing colors. Because to them, good Star Wars kind of begins and ends with good lightsaber fights. But to me, and don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a good-looking lightsaber fight, but to me, the best ones aren't always the ones that are the most visually impressive. Sure, sometimes they coincide, like Duel of the Fates is both a impressive-looking fight, as well as one that has a lot of things at stake where you are vested in the characters, even if you do know Kenobi is, he's not exactly going to die there, is he? But anyway, I would argue the best lightsaber fights in Star Wars are the ones that, well, we care about the characters involved and where the stakes are high, or where something is at stake that we actually care about. It could be something smaller or maybe something big, but something has to be on the line. And since I only really cared about one of the characters in this fight, or one character in the show really, that being Sol, and I knew there was virtually no way he was going to die here. They still have to resolve everything he knows from the past, from 16 years ago. We still have to have this big confrontation between him and Osha. And so, since I knew he wasn't going to die, and I didn't really care about any of the other characters involved, all this really felt to me was, well, it felt like eye candy. There wasn't a lot of emotional weight or stakes behind any of it. The only reason Jecki's death has any meaning at all, at least to me, is because she had meaning to Sol. And so all the deaths we saw here almost felt more like shock value than anything else, anything with any meaning behind it. They knew, as I was saying, they knew there would be those out there who take to X and are going to be sad because the character they fell in love with even before the show came out, because they just pick the characters they want to like and then like them. But they knew those people would take to Twitter and go, oh my god, can't believe this character died. It is so sad. It is so shocking. But anyway, moving on to some of the things that maybe weren't so good or were maybe even downright bad. Well, first we had the runtime. This was another sub 30-minute episode when you take out the opening and ending credits. And I can't help but feel like last week's episode and this one should have just been put together into one long episode, and that they were only split apart to drag out the length of the season in order to hopefully keep people subscribed to Disney Plus for an extra week, essentially. Like they were told, we need 8 episodes in total, and when they wrote the show, they didn't have 8, so they just split this thing in half. Next up here, it turned out that the obvious choice for being the Sith was the right choice. It did turn out to be Kamir. It turned out to be the guy that they had been pointing at, especially in the last episode, with big flashing red arrows and lights saying, hey, this is the Sith. There was, at least yet, no sort of curveball of any kind here. And I mean, my bad, I guess, for giving them some credit last week in my review last week, when I said it was so obvious that it had to be him, that it wasn't going to be him, that they were sort of faking us out, that it would actually end up being somebody else because it was just too obvious, way too obvious it was him. But nope, it was just him, unless again something really strange or fishy is going on, which I don't see how that would even be the case. And apparently he hates the Jedi because he doesn't get to use power, he doesn't get to use the Force the way he wants to use it. Which, yeah, a Sith certainly might feel that way. I don't really have any problem with him saying that or him feeling that way again. But I can't help but wonder if this is maybe a further attempt to reinforce this strange narrative that the show has been running with, that the Jedi do not allow anyone else in the galaxy to use the Force, like at all. That they are policing it, and any use of it at all that they don't approve of will be met with punishment or something. And speaking of him being the Sith, well, he flat out does tell Sol that he is one, or, well, he doesn't exactly say that. He says, I have no name, but Jedi like you might call me a Sith. Which immediately raises so many questions about so many different things or aspects of this that I don't even know where to begin. But the first one I will bring up is, does he have a master or not? Because with this being such an obvious reveal, again, I can't help but feel like maybe there is something more going on here. And I know I'm giving them too much credit yet again. But I can't help but feel like there's another reveal coming, that we are going to see yet another Sith, or see his master. I wouldn't be surprised if, and I don't know how this would exactly be the case or work out, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kamir isn't a real Sith at all, and that once a real Sith finds out about this, that maybe they catch wind of a bunch of Jedi being killed or something, they will go and investigate and they will end up killing him. Like we're going to get some kind of post-credit scene where Kamir is killed by Darth Tenebrous or something, and he calls him a pretender, and then we learn that yes, there are actually Sith out there and they are doing their thing, and they don't want any other pretender kind of potentially leading the Jedi to them or something like that. They want to keep operating in the shadows and carrying on with what they're doing. But if that does turn out to be the case, we still have to wonder who actually did indeed train him if he is not a, again, quote-unquote real Sith, because he is quite skilled. He is obviously very well trained. He did just murder a bunch of Jedi. Or perhaps it will turn out to be a Jedi who left the Order and trained him for some reason, or maybe it'll be Venestra Rose. She is still looking very guilty in my eyes of something. But maybe somebody trained him, he had a master who trained him, and that he learned that to become a Sith or part of a Sith ritual or tradition or something is to kill your master or to kill a Jedi without a weapon. And since he technically killed a Jedi if one trained him without a weapon, he now considers himself a Sith, which would then be why he wants his apprentice, or who he wants to be his acolyte, to kill a Jedi without a weapon, because that is what he thinks qualifies you as a Sith. I don't know, like I said, a lot of questions that this whole thing brings up, because I really don't feel like he is a traditional Sith. He is not in the lineage, if you will. I think he is something separate. or maybe he is a failed student of a Sith who didn't die. I don't know, but really don't get the impression by what he said that he is an actual Sith. I truly believe he doesn't think he is, but that he would be seen as one, which is still a pretty big issue. But anyway, before I start outthinking myself or continuing to give them perhaps too much credit with what they're doing here, the biggest question you could say of all that this brings up is that since Sol literally heard him call himself a Sith, or that it's what the Jedi might call him, how in the world does that not get back to the Jedi Council? How can that line from Ki-Adi-Mundi in The Phantom Menace hold up after all of this? And of course, I think what the obvious answer is, and what I think the show will end up doing, is that Sol will die before he ever gets the chance to report back to either Venestra or directly to the Council. And at this point, he should really just bypass Venestra and tell the Council directly what in the hell is going on. And that is assuming that Yoda didn't, I don't know, just feel the death of a bunch of Jedi. Not unlike how we could feel Anakin in pain once upon a time, or in the future technically, when his mother dies and then he goes on and slaughters a bunch of Tuskens. But either way, Sol needs to tell them what is going on. He needs to tell the Council, no matter what Venestra might want to say or do about it. He needs to tell them that a half dozen Jedi were just murdered by an extremely well-trained Force user who all but claimed himself to be a Sith. And I am assuming that Sol had to take a history class or two when he was a youngling or a Padawan, that he knows what a Sith is. I'm assuming every Jedi has heard the stories, the legends of the Sith, even if they have been gone for 1,000 years, that they are going to be taught about them. They're going to be taught about the dangers of the dark side and all of that. So he has to understand the significance of this particular person saying that they are essentially a Sith. But like I said, I get the feeling that Sol will be killed before he ever gets the chance to do any of that. However, even if we operate under the assumption that Yoda has not felt anything in the Force, he does not sense anything amiss in the broader galaxy, if you will, I still don't know how you would keep from the Council that a half dozen Jedi just went missing, that they went on a mission to Kofar, where they were trying to track down someone who had been trained in the Force, in the dark side of the Force, I should say, and then assuming that, yeah, you do go and search for them, that you are going to find a bunch of dead bodies that were killed by a lightsaber. Though I am already wondering if Sol does indeed die before ever getting the chance to report back to them and say the word Sith to them. I'm wondering if the Jedi will go and investigate and find them all dead, but think they turned on each other, or that something else stupid happened here. And we do know, we have seen images of Venestra on this planet, so we know she is going to go there. But will she come to the conclusion, or try to sell the conclusion, that something kind of strange happened here? I mean, we have seen a few times now where a character kind of falls and they land in this red dust, or they kick up these red spores, I'm assuming. And I can't help but get the feeling that it's like some kind of hallucinogenic or poison or something along those lines, something that affects the mind. And Venestra will run with this story after she's sent there to investigate, like we know she probably will be, that it was nothing but a tragic accident, that the Jedi got possessed by the spores and they killed each other, or something stupid like that. In other words, yes, I can see all sorts of paths or possibilities that they could take to kind of skirt around the whole the Jedi encounter the Sith thing, and then try to claim that none of this breaks canon, but that certainly doesn't make any of this good or even clever. And I can't help but feel like they chose to do all of this in order to, when all is said and done, to say, you see, it all makes sense now, that they used Ki-Adi-Mundi because they knew a lot of fans would throw a bit of a fuss, and then they could say, we got you, because it technically doesn't break canon, but again, it's still not good, so what did you accomplish? But anyway, another thing to bring up here is the ending, where May cuts her hair in an attempt to fool Sol into believing that she's Osha? And I mean, this one is dumb on so many levels, or in so many ways. First of all, what about the symbol on May's forehead that she got in that little ceremony all those years ago? Is Sol not going to notice that she has it? And second, and more importantly, how does he not sense that it's not Osha? How does he not sense that it's not his Padawan of many, many years, even if it has been several years that they separated? Literally in this episode, when fighting the Sith, when fighting Khmer, he talks about how he senses something familiar about him. And so he can sense something familiar about the Sith he's been fighting for like 5 minutes, And my guess is Chimera was there in the witch's fortress 16 years ago looking for an apprentice. He had somehow heard about the twins being born, and that is why he was there. He wanted to take one away too. But anyway, Sol, can sense something familiar about someone that he maybe encountered 16 years ago and is encountering again. But he doesn't realize this isn't his former Padawan who he knew for years and has been with the last few days. And yeah, I know what you might be thinking here. Well, maybe Sol knows that it's actually May and not Osha. He's playing along. That's why when he woke up, he asked, "Where is your sister?" Because he was already aware of the attempted manipulation or something. But if that is true, what does he stand to gain from going along with this? What is he going to get out of May with her acting like Osha? He's not tricking her into giving him anything because there's nothing left for her to give to him. He knows that she doesn't know anything more about the Sith or about Chimera than what he has already learned himself, basically. She didn't even know his identity. She had never seen his face before. She was just as surprised it was him as anybody else. And so, as I see it, if Sol is indeed aware of the deception and going along with it, all he has really accomplished is leaving Osha behind in a jungle to face whatever might be in there alone or all by herself, and where she's probably going to die. Not to mention, we can be pretty sure that Sol doesn't actually know it's May. Because we can go back to the episode earlier in the season, I think it was the first one, where Sol notices that Osha has a tattoo on her arm, and he mentions it, and that he's going to see her or see that she doesn't have it and realize, oh, that's not Osha, it's May. That is more than likely what that whole tattoo scene from a few episodes is setting up. But what is maybe, just maybe, even worse than any of that, is how does May think this is actually going to work? Why does she believe that Sol is going to fall for this? How does she know, or again, why does she believe that Sol won't be able to just sense that this isn't Osha? Does she have some kind of ability to keep him out of her head? And if she does, wouldn't Sol find that suspicious that Osha suddenly has this ability? Then again, maybe that stun really messed with Sol's brain or something, and he can't sense anything because he was sure out a long time from it. Way longer than May was out when she got hit with it, because she was up and about again in under 5 minutes and seemed fine, whereas again Sol was out much longer. Though maybe that 5-minute stun was enough to scramble her brain into thinking posing as Osha was a good plan and that it could possibly work. And speaking of getting your brain scrambled, I am assuming that May has kind of flipped sides yet again, and she is hoping to kill Sol, the last survivor of the four now, without a weapon in order to get back in the good graces of her master, if she still thinks her master is alive, which I guess she does. But anyway, yeah, that is what I think her plan is right now, to deceive Sol in order to get close to him so that she can kill him without a weapon. But before she can pull it off, he is going to notice she doesn't have the tattoo and he is going to stop her. And no spoilers or anything, but I can't believe how similar this is to something that happened in House of the Dragon this week, but how it was done so much better there. And so, to start to wrap this up, I think we can sort of see where this show is going and how it'll technically try to fit itself into the canon without technically contradicting the lore. It looks like it might just try and tap dance its way around certain things, at least when it comes to the Jedi encountering the Sith. Though the whole thing about how the twins were made, I don't know how that will get explained, and we already heard from Leslie Headland that it won't really get explained, that we would see it from multiple different points of view or multiple sides and have to kind of come to our own conclusions. However, here, even if this doesn't technically break the canon, which is something no show should do anyway, that's not something we should really celebrate it for. It's something we should just expect out of Star Wars, to not contradict its own lore. But the problem is, this is just a very, very poorly written show, in my opinion. It has done little to build up these characters, to give us a reason to truly care about what happened 16 years ago. And though, sure, it had some pretty lightsaber fights, they don't matter so much when I don't care what the result of them is going to be. Plus, I still get the feeling that the ultimate goal of this show is to cast a negative light upon the Jedi, and not just in terms of this begins to set up why they will fall in the prequels, but in a way that says, see, these are all the bad things that the Jedi do. This is the flaw with the Jedi Order itself, not of the Jedi at the time or why they will fall. And my number one fear going into this show is that it would try to do something just like this. That it might even try to say that the Sith were, in a sense, justified, or that they only exist because of the Jedi. And I can see signs here that that is exactly what the show is going to try and do, but I sure do hope I'm wrong about that. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought about this episode. Did you like it? Did you not like it? And what do you think is going to happen next? Where is this show going? And so, whatever you think, do leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.